Welcome to The Demon in the Details. I'm your host, Caden Graves, and in this episode, I bring you the latest news covering the Me Forking 2 movement. The Me Forking 2 movement was an Instagram page started by Nathan Williams after his experience with the Title IX office. After gaining traction and supporters, Nathan decided to make an organization to help advocate for victims of sexual assault. Hello, my name is Caden Graves, and I'm here with
Nathan Williams,
Philip Parker,
Haley Keeler.
They are all part of the Me Forking 2 movement, organization, group. What would y'all like to be referred as?
organization now. We're trying to become an RSO on campus.
Well, you already answered my first question. So how is that going for y'all?
Right now, waiting on Miss Noel to send me all the information. I'm working on the Constitution and just got to get a few signatures and we'll be fine.
Okay. So I understand that there are 3 co-presidents, correct?
Two co-presidents, but Anna's going to graduate.
Yeah.
So, really.
I got you. I understand. And you're the vice president, Nathan?
yes.
And you are?
I'm PR.
That's what I thought. I did a little bit of research beforehand. All right. So what kind of led to the creation of the Me Forking 2? What did you think was the necessity, and like what changes did you want to make?
So I personally have been going through the Title IX process on this campus this entire semester, and there was a few things that felt off at first. And at first I wasn't thinking any student conduct, or any student rights violations. I wasn't thinking like any sort of mishandling of cases. It just felt off at first. But the longer and longer I was going through it, the more and more there's like, okay, this is more than just off. Like my concerns aren't really being heard, and according to the school's page, right? Like on all these things, they're supposed, like everything that's brought forward is supposed to be investigated. They're supposed to remedy the issue. There are things that they're supposed to be doing that weren't getting done. And so, and I was also told the blanket statement of don't talk about your case with anyone, right? As I've now found out multiple people have been told. And then I looked a little deeper into it, and according to the student handbook, like they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to prevent people from discussing any allegations of misconduct on campus. And so I began to share my story, and it caught fire, basically. People started sharing it anonymously on Yik Yak about their experiences, and it's things that I think we've all heard before, that the process is tiring, that concerns aren't being heard, and that students often feel like they just have to go informal on the processes to get them over with, or drop cases altogether. Which looks good for the school on paper, because then, there's no finding of responsibility, so they can't necessarily, that way they're able to say that these crimes didn't necessarily happen on campus. But in reality, it's going unpunished. And there's nothing done to remedy these issues. So we are planning to release the day of our Survivors Walk.
Okay.
But then there's also things that we want to be able to do as an RSO, such as make sure that resources both on and off campus are easily accessible to students. We're working on a comprehensive resource guide that can really help survivors, their families, their friends at any point in their healing process. And it won't necessarily have everything that we want to have on it, because a lot of those will rely on the school in the future, but we do plan on having some alternatives in there.
Okay. So I understand that y'all met with Dr. Jones. Is that right?
We did.
Yes.
And so how did that make y'all feel?
So for me, since that was I feel like that was my first actual big meeting Dr. Jones. I was like, whew, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was a lot of pressure.
But I bet it definitely made y'all feel heard, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Yes.
that's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, at least I would assume so.
Yeah, I mean, it was nerve-wracking, but it's also a reminder that even if it is a college, it's still a small school, and the president is there.
Yeah.
When I started here, Dr. Maggio was the president.
Yeah.
And he was very there for students, and I guess I did not know if Dr. Jones was going to be the same or not.
Mm-hmm.
And he appears to be, very open to hearing students out.
Well, that's good, because I know Dr. Maggio was a very eccentric man, and he was very everywhere. It seemed like you couldn't get away from him.
Yeah.
So let me see. Let me look through my questions. Do you believe that Me Forking 2 has increased awareness of sexual harassment and assault at NSU?
I think so. At least now there's a dialogue started.
Yeah.
So people at least are talking about it, which overall will raise our awareness to these issues.
I've heard more people like, since I've like started becoming a part of the organization, tell me that like, we love what y'all are doing. We love stuff, like they're the ones telling me about it. I didn't have to tell them, they just come to me, and I'm just like, people are hearing about it and they're becoming aware.
I think some people didn't know necessarily Title IX was doing anything wrong.
Exactly.
They probably blame themselves. I know a few people that probably would have blamed themselves in that situation.
Yeah. And do y'all believe y'all have incited change at Title IX? Like, do you think they're going to change because of y'all?
We don't know what these changes are going to look like, but I feel like at the very least, now that students are talking openly about this, there will be more accountability.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we keep the conversation going, but there are certain changes that we do want from the school and from the Title IX office, and those will be laid out in our petition.
Yeah, and so you said something about the Title IX, like, silencing y'all in a sense, right? With
Yes, and one of the things that we have been wanting to do since day one is to have a student rights advocate working within the Title IX and student conduct processes. This would allow both complainants and respondents, because due to, I want to say it's under Title VII, they have to have these equal opportunities for both sides of these issues. But this person's only job would be to let students know their student rights. So to lay out what they can and cannot say without violating confidentiality or FERPA, right? Which will go a long ways rather than the blanket statement of don't talk about the case with anyone.
Yeah.
Because
it kind of halts the healing process in a sense.
Exactly.
So I know May 4th y'all have y'all's Survivor Walk. I'd like y'all to tell me a little bit about that, just whatever y'all got planned. Or
Well, leadership will be talking to the people who come to the Survivor Walk, and Nathan knows more if they planned it.
Yes. So this, I guess, was the first event that Me Forking 2, before even establishing leadership, or even before our first meeting, this was an event that was going to happen. And I'd love to see it happen in the years coming, because it's important. And it's also the message that Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is the month of April, doesn't stop in April, right? It's something that we have to be conscious about year round. So it's that, and then it's also a form of protest. And it's a form of protest for survivors that have been dismissed. Like, this is with or without the Title IX process, because this is a problem in our society where we resort to things like victim blaming whenever we meet survivors with disbelief. Whenever survivors feel pressured to change schools or change jobs because they feel like there's no other alternative. So it's definitely a form of protest, and then it's also going to be the release of things like our comprehensive resource guide, the petition, and then we also want everyone that comes to be aware of what to expect whenever a survivor confides in them, because statistically, we're all we've all met survivors. And also statistically, at some point or another, a survivor is going to confide in us about what happened to them. And so it's important that we as a collective know what to do when that happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of already out of questions. However, if y'all guys have anything you want to say, just as...
We do plan on working with counseling services and establishing support groups on campus. I think you said that earlier. But that's really all that I have to say.
Because I know this is, a budding organization, And I'm glad people are like you are, laying the groundwork for future students. Because statistically, on college campuses, it happens, and it's a tragedy. And I'm glad people are trying to hold our campus accountable.
And we just need to keep this in the public. We need to make sure that people don't forget that it happened as if it was just a 1 week thing.
Yeah.
We're trying to make sure that this is a change that's going to stick around, and more people can understand not only what is possibly going wrong in the school, but even once those things are hopefully fixed, we can show people that you should try to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, go ahead.
And there's also some grace to be had on the side of the school.
Yeah.
Because, in 2020, not sure who all might be aware of this, but there were major changes to Title IX and Title IX processes underneath the Trump administration, which a lot of those changes makes it harder for survivors to go through with formal processes.
Yeah.
And a lot of schools have had problems adapting to these new policy changes. And so, there is some grace to be had, but it's something that needs to be moving with these policy changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we don't just stop supporting survivors because it gets a little harder underneath new policy.
I know that, because I think one of the reasons why they don't always go with formal, what is it? Formal complaints?
Yes, formal complaints.
It's like formal complaints is nowadays that, if let's say Title IX does get it wrong, the school can get sued for millions, and that's probably why they try to lead you towards informal complaints. So I just think that's kind of crazy, and I'm glad y'all are making a change, but really that's all I have for y'all. Thank y'all so much with meeting with me for this podcast. But yeah, thank y'all so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in for the last episode of this semester. This has been Caden Graves with The Demon in the Details.